Hi, and welcome back to our first session after lunch entitled Using Leadership and Influence to Shape the Future of AI. In this session, we will be thinking about how we as health and safety and wellbeing professionals can use our skills in leadership, persuasion, and communication to help manage and influence the future use of artificial intelligence in work. We're joined today by Sean Elson. He is a regulatory partner at Pinsent Masons LLP, specialising in health and safety law and defending clients in serious work-related incident investigations, including manslaughter cases, with a focus on the infrastructure sector and CDM 2015 regulations. He is a founding member of the Health and Safety Lawyers Association and currently serves as president of the Construction Health and Safety Group, who are promoting industry standards and innovation. So I will now hand over to yourself, Sean. I look forward to the session.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining. God bless you for coming back after lunch, and particularly as I know you're faced in the first two sessions with a couple of lawyers. I'm first, and then I'll be followed by Chris Green of Ward Hadaway later. And I'm going to be desperately trying to make sure that I don't tread all over any issues that Chris has to speak about regarding legal implications of AI. I've got Charlotte controlling the slides, and in the style, those of you who remember those pandemic briefings at number 10 with Professor Chris Whitty, I shall be doing the next slide, please, Charlotte, and we'll be doing it that way. I absolutely refuse to accept, however, that is a catchphrase. If you remember, some people said that became Chris Whitty's catchphrase, so I refuse to accept it as a catchphrase at all. But Charlotte, if we could go to the first slide, please. Thank you. I'm not going to talk about the firm. What I do want to talk about really is the perspective that I bring to this particular topic about leadership and AI and the AI-enabled workplace, because I think it's important to say what I'm not. What I'm not is a futurologist. I am not a technology person per se. I'm not a management consultant. I'm not, I've not spent any time at McKinsey's or Accenture or anybody like that. What I have been doing is this work advising complex organizations across a number of sectors for over 25 years in terms of workplace health and safety matters before the event and after the event. And during that time have engaged with the senior leadership of some very large sort of global level and complex organizations operating in high hazard industries, as well as health and safety professionals. And I think that gives us an insight into the way that leadership teams think and about what is the nature of leadership when they're trying to identify and control risks. And there are some fundamental issues that I will want to continue talking about. So that's really my perspective, is to bring some of those lessons that we've learned and to have those as reflections for the next 20-25 minutes. I will try to leave a few minutes at the end of this presentation, Steve, for the purpose of any questions if people want to put them into the system, and we can look at those then. And as I say, we operate, Steve was very kind to talk about the focus of my practice, which is largely in infrastructure and energy. Not exclusively so, but what we learn from those high hazard industries, including offshore, renewables, oil and gas, big construction projects, is that those kinds of industries, they really like a shiny new toy. They really, really do. Not necessarily simply for production and operational reasons, but also for purposes of controlling risks. And AI looks really familiar when you place it into that kind of context. Before I go to the next slide, Charlotte, I just want to do, if I can, a couple of headline reflections from me for people just to carry with them for the rest of this session, is that when we talk about leadership, there is often a sense of thinking about boards of directors, the SLT, the people right at the very top. When I think we would probably all recognise on this call that that's far too naive and simplistic a view about what leadership means and what it looks like. Our experience of working in those sort of hazardous environments I've mentioned, particularly in the aftermath of a serious incident, is that everybody has a role to play, and that leadership takes many forms, whether it's leadership on the ground at a supervisory level, whether it's the board setting the strategy, whether it's a project director, whether it's a health and safety lead or a health and safety director. There are many forms of leadership, and the larger and more complex organization you are, the greater levels and layers of leadership there is. And I would suggest that all of those, from a supervisory level on the ground during ops all the way through to the board, AI is going to become a very important enabling tool, and we'll come on to that shortly. The other point is that many years ago, the Court of Appeal handed down a statement which, from an ethical and principle perspective, must be right, which is that the law means that, you know, an employee shouldn't be no less safe in a smaller organisation than if they worked in a large and complex organisation. And as I say, it's a statement of principle. Who could possibly argue with that? But of course, that's handed down from a very high level in the Court of Appeal. And we know that different organisations, they have different staffing levels, they have different levels of resource. So if we're thinking about, you know, is there a possibility here for divergence of standards because of the use and deployment of AI and the resources available to do that? Well, that seems to me that that is something that leaders and businesses must reflect on. So what the law expects, and I say I'll leave that to Chris, but what the law expects and what the standard is very important, particularly seen through this prism of artificial intelligence and the tech that it enables. Next slide, please, Charlotte. Thank you very much indeed. So a theme for today is very much the rapid development and rollout of AI. And is that a lot to do with changing the shape of leadership within an organization? Or is it really the case that it's potentially a supercharged enabler for the setting of parameters and strategy within organizations? In other words, is AI going to change the nature of leadership? Or is it that leadership will be shaped by, or will the leadership shape the deployment of AI within a particular environment and a different business? And I would have to suggest I'd rather take the latter view. I don't think that leadership around safety issues necessarily will change fundamentally simply because of the existence of AI, but I think that leadership teams will, of course, shape what it is that they want to use, how they're going to use it, and the deployment of that. So it is a time of great change, I think. I buy that. It is possible, I think, to sometimes think of this in terms of, oh, is it the latest passing fancy? Is it a load of media hype? I don't take that view. We already know that AI is with us, and we're all using it on a day-to-day basis in lots of different ways, from our emails and creating a presentation like this, for example. But is it going to be fundamentally changing the nature of leadership? Or is it the other way around? So in my view, I would suggest that we're going to get to a point where the use of AI, good, excellent, we think we can use these tools, and people are already using these tools, but those need to be firmly anchored to some long-established principles. And I think we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of the wood for the trees. So Charlotte, can I move on to the next slide? And maybe I can just add something to that. And this is very much reflecting the point that I was making earlier. What is it that we've had conversations about where we've been working with boards of directors of multinational companies, or with health and safety leadership teams? What is it that we see as drivers? And it would be fair to say that I think it's trite and everybody understands, oh, yeah, go back to your NEBOSH certificate or whatever it might be. What are the reasons for compliance? Well, they're financial, they're ethical, and they are legal. And ordinarily, it would be fair to say that the kinds of organisations we work with, and certainly if you're on this call, the British Safety Council's annual conference, then you are unlikely to be from the type of employing organisation who is prepared to sacrifice standards or put people at risk. There we are. There's a bold statement. But it's certainly true that our clients will ordinarily want to be in legal compliance. They sometimes get that wrong. Sometimes things go missing in action, but ultimately that's where their starting point is. However, my experience has always been that change is not necessarily driven and leadership decisions are not made about what we deploy, how we structure ourselves, etc., because we've been told the law tells us we've got to. And as a director or senior manager within this business, I might go to prison if I don't. Occasionally, we are still asked to come and do board presentations and training to directors who it's perceived don't get it and who need to, quote, have the wind put up them. And that often results in a dialogue about whether or not that is the most effective way forward. But this question leads on to issues such as, well, if that's not what's driving us, and we go back to those other points about financials and ethics and those sorts of things, what is driving decision making and leadership opinion? Well, what leadership teams often want to explore is, firstly, from the lawyers, is, well, this is the approach we've developed. Pinsent Masons, do you think that this is an acceptable approach? Do you think that this kind of gets us over that sort of expectation about what the law needs us to do? That's tick box one. Secondly, what we're often asked is, what is it that you're seeing that others are doing in our industry, in our sector, in organisations of our size and complexity? And of course, the more people get out and join conferences like this, the better that is. But because we operate, we don't just work with one client, we operate across a number of clients, often in a similar sector. It is possible to then reflect with them and say, well, this is what we see others doing. And I think that is directly relevant to this issue of the relevance of artificial intelligence and its use and how it enables a particular business. So if we're not using it, are others using it, but to a degree? Are you seeing them using it in an effective way? So in terms of what interests leadership teams, those very definitely resonate with me. What do you see others doing, Sean? And where do you think we stand by being marked against them? And I think with the use of technology and kit lends itself very, very easily to that kind of question about what is the industry standard. And I'll be, again, reflecting that on in a moment. Charlotte, next slide, please. All of this, I'm afraid, can tend towards stating the bleeding obvious. So I don't want to go into this in too much detail. But of course, you've already heard from other speakers this morning who have been talking about the nature of AI and the way that that's being deployed in the workplace. And all of this, again, is the kind of discussions that we have with our clients and leadership teams. And it's, yes, if there is an intervention by a regulator, one of the questions is, what are the potential outcomes? What are the risks to the business? What is the level of fine? But it's rarely just about the fine, and in some cases, it's not about the fine at all. It's about other consequences, such as, in particular, customer expectations. If you work in the rail or the highways industry, you may only have one client, and what's their response going to be to this particular issue? What are their expectations about the way that we deliver? And I think in the world of technology and AI-enabled technology, I think that's very definitely going to play into leadership decisions when they look at, well, what is our relationship? What are our customers expecting us to have? and also about workplace relationships. I think that there is a very live question when it comes to AI in these sometimes quite philosophical discussions that leadership teams might have. Often they're very commercial environments, but sometimes these sort of wider issues come in. But, well, what do we want to be in terms of delivering safe outcomes? What will we want to be in relation to the use of this new technology in bringing about those safe outcomes? So, do we want to be compliant with the law? Is that all we're really looking to be? Baseline. So, we want to be compliant with the law. And if there's technology there that we can utilize and that others are utilizing and that is now considered to be, the standard for what is reasonably practicable to deliver our duties, well, then that's where we're going to be. But then other organizations, of course, whether they think it's because of commercial advantage or whether it's being driven by its reputation, which itself is a driver for revenue, whether it's been driven by the people that work for them, or again, is it being driven by customer expectations? They may say, well, no, we don't want to just be Act compliant. We want to be best in class. Or we want to be an exemplar. We don't just want to be best in class, we want to actually go out and we want to promote and evangelize. I have to say there aren't too many commercial clients that have come to me wanting to take that particular view. But as you say, this is one of those areas I think that leadership teams do have to think about in this particular context. How far do we want to go and why do we want to go there? Is it simply because we think this is doable and this will minimize legal risks, it will enhance our reputation, it will enhance business relationships, it will provide a happier and a more engaged workforce? All of that is really good and we're going to go there, but others sometimes will want to go further. Charlotte. So with this question, and it goes back to some of my earlier remarks, is shiny new toy. Lots of chatter, lots of developments within the world of AI. The question is, to what extent is it changing the fundamentals that business leaders have to engage with and manage year upon year upon year? And I have to say, I wonder to what extent the fundamentals are changed. Not how do we meet those fundamental requirements and obligations, but the fundamentals. So identifying risks and control measures. I'll come on to the risk identification just in a moment. How do we enabling people, giving them the tools, mechanical, tech, but also the psycho-safety tools as well to be able to stop work, to say that's not right, to want to bring about change. How do we enable people? Providing resources. Again, it's trite, I know, but one of those tests in terms of what is reasonably practicable and what is it the expectation is on business, where if we go back to INDG 417 for business leaders, is making sure we've got adequate allocation of time and resources. And again, Steve was kind enough to mention my work in CDM, and CDM again reflects, have we made adequate resources available? So, is there an AI-enabled tech that is available to us that we can provide or should be able to provide, and how do we finance and fund all of that? Setting objectives and priorities, again, it's a fundamental, but then also how do we review our performance against those objectives and priorities? Some of which will be financial, some of which will be leading and lagging safety indicators, and everyone has a view about what are effective indicators in these kinds of scenarios. And clearly, AI has a role to play in each of these fundamentals, but have those fundamentals changed? I don't get any sense from the business leaders that we're talking about that they're letting the wood get in the way of the trees, or vice versa. I'm never quite sure which is which. When they sit down and they work out what is their strategy, what are their plans and objectives in a safety context, they kind of seem to me to be remain very much stable. Then more a question of, well, what can we bring to bear to deal with this? So, Charlotte, if we move on to the next one, please. Just a word of warning from lawyers talking about innovation. We often try to engage with clients about innovation, and I found it a bit of a mugs game. So we're all very smug, we've been getting stuck into this. We've met a lot of clients, we've gone to conferences, and then we start to talk to clients about what we think is innovative, and we're often told, well, Sean, we're already doing that and already have been for some time now. So thanks very much, but not so innovative. And the truth of it is, as you'll have seen from earlier presentations today, examples exist all around us in what has been deployed within an AI and AI-enabled technology for the purpose of managing health and safety. Charlotte, I can spin through the next few slides fairly quickly, if I may. This one here, for example, going back to my point, we're already doing that, Sean, is kind of what you might get with some of these. None of this is very clever. I'm sure there's a lot of cleverness involved in all of this, but we are already seeing this, and that we have duty holders across a number of different sectors who are engaging with these kinds of concepts. I hope that by doing this, I can at least affirm what I'm seeing in the market as to the use of this kind of stuff. And some of it is very clever, and some of it you can go, wow, that really can and should make a difference to some of those fundamentals that we're talking about. So, Charlotte, if I just say spin through the next few very quickly, predictive analytics, monitoring and surveillance, using AI-enabled cameras and those sorts of things, that's all good. Again, Charlotte, please. The same again in PPE compliance and hazard detection. We all know that if you're in a very hazardous environment like chemicals, oil and gas, technologies for monitoring are quite sophisticated, and a lot of reliance is put on all of that. So again, why would any of this be a surprise that people have immediately seized on these things as something that they would want to use and deploy? And the last word about what we're seeing is the next one, Charlotte. Again, compliance and report. I mean, virtual training and simulation. I had people talking to me about that for a number of years, with various degrees of success. And of course, some of it was quite expensive when it was first being developed, and people were finding some funding internally for that sort of thing. But I think the key one to focus on here is the increasing use of AI in producing data sets, greater granularity in relation to compliance and reporting up. And I think that one of the factors for leaders to consider there is indeed, well, how much of this data do we need? So if I'm sitting there at a project director level or a health and safety director level, well, then I'm probably going to want to see a lot of granular detail. By the time it filters through that to the board, maybe not so much. But again, I think that's for business leaders to reach a judgment about what works for them, what do they feel they need, and that's this kind of tech is definitely going to assist in this, isn't it? And you don't need me to tell you that. Charlotte, next one, please. But this for me, I don't know if this is a contentious point or not, but it occurred to me. How many leaders are genuinely intending to place AI at the heart of its health, safety, and welfare strategy? Or is it the case that AI is being acquired and embedded either on an ad hoc basis to as control measures, or it's programs that are being brought in for something else, which also have a collateral benefit? Should they be placing it at the heart of their health, safety, and welfare model? I suspect this depends on what kind of leader you are and where you sit in the leadership chain. So if I am a health, safety, and environmental director, I may well be looking to embed AI at the heart of our strategy, because I know it's going to help us to gather data, to control risks, etc. But in terms of, if I'm a PLC and I'm looking at AI, am I looking at initially from the benefit, from the purposes and from the perspective of health and safety? I suspect not. Charlotte, next slide, please. There are some moving parts to that. Who is leading on this, embedding it into the safety management system? What are the investment implications? Have we got the money for it? Are we going to get enough cost benefit? Will it deliver what it was promised? And how do we know? And when might we need to go backwards? So if we're introducing and embedding this, then we also need to work out, well, how are we going to measure the benefits of it? Because we're going to be asked, if someone spent, a very significant sum of money, we're going to be asked to show where we've got the benefits from. And, there will be metrics that can show that. Next slide, please, Charlotte, just keeping up with the time. Going back to this point about collateral benefits, we might not, as a leadership team and a business, be engaging with AI and embedding that for the purpose of health and safety, but we're certainly going to be deploying it. We're going to be introducing it, and it may be that there will be some perspectives and some collateral benefits that flow from that. For example, about work planning and programming and resourcing. Think about very hot topic at the minute. Think about workplace stress. How might delivery systems and logistics systems powered by AI also have a collateral benefit in relation to scheduling of deliveries, which means that there's fewer people plant interfaces in the yard or on a particular site? Will it generate record keeping that we will have a collateral benefit? And we know that this has been going on for a long time, not just necessarily with AI, but telemetry in vehicles, for example. The telemetry might be there, it has a health and safety element to it, but after the event, after a serious incident, for example, that telemetry can be deployed for all sorts of reasons in understanding work patterns and movements, etc. So that comes back to the idea that one of the roles for leaders, it seems to me, is that when we're bringing in AI, then we're looking to see about making it a coherent approach. Next one, Charlotte. I'm going to again spin over this very quickly so I don't cross over into Chris Green's territory, but just to remind ourselves that the legal duties won't have changed significantly. There is no AI health and safety law. What is ALARP, as low reasonable practicable, has. The Act is 50 years old. What is really important is what has become an industry standard in the use of AI. Are we doing that, or are we going some way further? Are we aspiring to a standard that we cannot meet? Because we should not set ourselves a standard that we cannot meet. It will simply be used as a stick to beat you with. Charlotte, next couple of slides, please. We can move on to the next one. Thank you. It's about people. This is a manifestation of an age-old problem, is how do we take people with us as leaders? This is the essence of leadership, isn't it? We know that technology has a high degree of functionality that many of us don't use or want. It can confuse and frustrate people. And in AI's context, you also have people who may be actually fearful about their future role in the organization. So one of the issues here for leaders is about, is it being driven downwards from the top? Are we saying you're going to have this, like it or not? And is that really the way to go? There's also this issue about functionality, is there will be AI technology that can go, can take you to the moon. I think there's a very clear role for leadership to be able to say, we go this far and we go no further for some of the reasons I've already expressed. Charlotte, next slides, please. We also have to be aware as leaders about unintended consequences. So I think there's lots of discussion about whether or not we should be using risk assessments, having AI to develop our risk assessments for us. And we know that if we put 100 rubbish previous risk assessments into an AI machine, it'll produce another rubbish risk assessment. How comfortable are we with the use of this kind of technology? What is our policy about addressing the use of technology, both for that and other technologies? Also, on the other side of that slide is we might use technology to separate people from vehicles, for example. So the point here to make is, if we're relying on technology, it better be available, because if it isn't, then we need to know about it and we need to be able to deal with it. Charlotte, next slide, please. I think this is a really important point, is who has the ear of the leadership team when we're considering the use of AI and deployment of technology, which leaders may often barely understand. Next slide, Charlotte. And what I'm thinking about here is, is the leadership team being spoken to and persuaded by the CTO, by a software and AI provider, consultants, or does it come from the health and safety leads? I would suggest that we certainly need to be listening to operational leaders and managers, and in particular the workforce, because they are the people who are going to actually be interfacing with this on a day-to-day basis. Charlotte, next one. And the one after, please. And this leads, I'm very nearly finished here. This leads to a very real leadership issue, which is the cost benefit analysis of developing and rolling out AI. There'll be a cost to that, almost inevitably. Will it enhance safety? Will it produce efficiencies? Where does that leave us in a cost benefit analysis? Or are those benefits illusory, and will we be better making those investments in a different way by deploying more people, more traditional controls, additional training, greater resource? So I think that is very definitely something that leaderships will be taking with them. Along with the next slide, Charlotte, I can deal with this very swiftly, is the procurement of this material. We're already starting to see talk about, oh, is there an AI bubble? Not everybody will be there at the end of this. And if the bubble bursts, who will get washed away with the tide? So I think that when we are looking to partner with people, we need to reflect that this is about partnerships, it's about long hauls, and who are we going to be working with? And then finally, Steve, I promise I am finishing, almost on the button. Just to wrap that up, it's about leadership teams bringing a coherent response to the use of AI from our procurement points, from our investments about costs and benefit, embedding this in a strategy. Also, how are we going to empower people to deliver this at an operational level, and what advantages will this give us in terms of being able to measure our business and bring us the information that we need as leaders, so we can check whether the investment was worthwhile making and whether or not it's made damn all difference. So those are my reflections, Steve. I said I was going to leave 5 minutes available for questions. I'm afraid I've left almost no time for questions. I'm so sorry.
Sean, that's absolutely fine, mate. Fortunately, we've got a few minutes before the next session. I'd like to thank you, Sean, an enlightening session, as all of our sessions have been today. I know you've worked with us in the past, and colleagues of yours have done the same. We are very, very grateful for your time, and I'm sure what everybody here would echo that. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you all. Thank you for your attention. Cheers.